My name is Ed Whitacre. I was born in Ennis, Texas, 1941. Ennis was a town of 4,000 people, most of which it seemed worked for the Southern Pacific Railroad, and those that didn't worked at the Ennis Cotton Tag Company. They made tags for bales of cotton. It's grown a lot since, but growing up, I don't know, I didn't grow up anywhere else. It was nice. It was a pretty segregated town in those days, but a nice place. Oh, I was pretty sure that I would work for the railroad, as most people did. But I didn't because my mother sort of insisted I go to college. And so I went off to college and went another route. My dad worked for the railroad for 50 years. Figured I'd be an engineer because I was pretty sure I could get a job. I wasn't sure if I'd majored in something else. So I was decent in math and was encouraged by some high school teachers, so I just chose engineering. Well, one summer I applied for a summer job, which Southwestern Bell, which was owned by AT&T, accepted me for a summer job in engineering, and I sort of did the grunt work, if you would, but I learned a lot, liked the company, and so after I graduated, they were nice enough to hire me again. 20 times. 20 times. I knew pretty quick on after I started to work I really didn't want to be an engineer. Although I'm a registered professional engineer, I wanted to deal with people, and so I managed to get myself in that position and went through all the so-called chairs of repair foreman, installation foreman, things like that, construction, and found out that I liked it a lot. And luckily for me, it was a big company. I had opportunities to do a lot of things in a lot of fields, you know, like marketing and sales and business offices and day-to-day practical situations. So it seemed to keep me occupied, and it was fun. I really don't know the answer to that. I kept moving when they wanted me to. I had no preconceived notions of making it to the top. It just sort of happened. I went from one job to another, to another, to another, and somebody thought I was okay, and I kept getting promoted and made it all the way to chairman, as you know. I did envision that. I set out to do that because I didn't think we could survive as Southwestern Bell. And so, as you said, we made a lot of acquisitions. I knew if we didn't get bigger, we wouldn't survive. And so we bought Pacific Bell and Bell South and a lot of wireless companies and did those sorts of things and made it the world's biggest, which was a lot of fun doing. Had a lot of heartaches along the way, but it was fun. And then met Steve Jobs, and we were the first to take the iPhone. And that was a big gamble on our part, but we did get a 5-year exclusive. And so I felt like we played, not me, but our whole team, we played a major part in moving us to where we are now. Well, he was going to sell us the iPhone, and we were going to distribute it for him. One of the conditions of doing that is that we got a 5-year exclusive deal, and he got to sell his iPhone. And the iPhone was expensive, him selling it to Southwest or to AT&T and then us reselling it. So the 5-year exclusive was a necessary part. He agreed to it, we agreed to it, and the rest is sort of history. Worked out for both of us. The landline is not dead for business. Somebody will probably figure out a way to use the copper network that's still there in very innovative, high information, high data. The residential is going to continue to drop because we all got these cell phones, but will it go away? I don't think so. Well, I think probably to get a lot bigger quickly, and probably to get in the cellular telephone business real fast and big, and we did. Well, you know, I got called and said, will you go to General Motors? And I said, I don't think so. I don't know much about cars. And I got called again. And then the third time I got called, and they said, you should look at this as a service to your country. Well, I couldn't say no to that, you know. So I went up there and I found out that really they didn't know what to think of me, nor did I know what to think of them. But management is management. It doesn't matter whether you're in the car business, it's still a people business, so it worked out real good. The Secretary of Treasury Secretary I talked with, and some of his people that were involved in the car business, the bailout of GM and Chrysler. And then I talked to President Obama quite a bit after I got there. He made regular trips to Detroit. I think we probably put in a management team that was more focused on people and what we needed to do to correct things and really just get busy and apply ourselves. General Motors had a very diverse sort of management, and they'd been in that mold for many, many years. So we changed out a lot of the management people, got real close to each other, decided what to do, and then implemented that and turned profitable real quick, and things went well. I never did lose any faith, if that's what you're talking about, in the country or our ability. And I guess I always suspected it was a management-employee relationship problem, understanding. And it was a difficult time. But you couldn't let a General Motors go away. It was the largest manufacturer in the United States. We'd owned General Motors cars as long as I could remember. So I just went up with the idea the country would recover, GM would. I thought we'd be fine. I just thought it'd take a little time. It actually happened quicker than I thought it would to recover. But was I worried about the country? Not really. I enjoy working with people. I like people. I think it's remarkable if people get on the same wavelength and work together what can be accomplished. I've seen that time after time. And I enjoy seeing that happen. I enjoy people I work with feeling good about themselves and feeling successful. So if I have a strength, which I'm not sure I do, I think it's the ability to relate to people and convey a message. I think I would tell them to sort of decide what you want to do, focus on that, don't deviate, be persistent, hang in there. The secret to success is hang in there, be persistent, don't give up. And I'd say I'd try to understand the general trends, and I think they'll do fine. San Antonio's changed considerable in the 20 years I've been here. First of all, I think it's a great city. I think it has a lot of attributes. It has some good people here, and I think San Antonio is doing just fine. It's not Dallas, it's not Austin, it's not Houston, it's our own personality. If I were king for a day, there's a few things I'd change. But for the most part, I think San Antonio is doing just fine, and I think it'll continue to change. Well, he was a very serious, quiet, focused sort of person who knew that he had potentially a great thing on his hands. I mean, you think about it, the applications that he envisioned, there weren't any applications. And now there's who knows how many, but it's in the hundreds of thousands of applications. I'd say he was a very focused, committed guy who knew he had something big, and obviously he's a lot smarter than me or somebody else in electronic matters, but a good guy. Well, it was very interesting. I think maybe one of the most interesting, maybe at the top, was I got to spend quite a bit of time with Nelson Mandela, who was the president of South Africa, because we bought the South African telephone company. That was very interesting, as you might imagine. He impressed me a lot. I still to this day think of those hours I got to spend with him. But it's like meeting you today. I didn't know you before today. You're right, the presidents. Presidents are just like you and I, and you're kind of awed by the responsibilities they have. But, you know, I've found them all to be very engaging, nice people, thoughtful, and focused. You know, I've thought about that question a lot. I think I'd do it pretty much the same way. I messed up a few times. I blew a few. But for the most part, I don't think I'd change the general trajectory of what happened, you know.
Speaking of trajectories, what are your thoughts on the trajectory of the country? Obviously, the stock market's doing really well. Unemployment's down to a certain degree, obviously. How do you feel the country's doing right now?
I think the country's doing pretty well right now. I think business seems to be strong. I think the economy is pretty darn good. I think, you know, there's a sense of removing regulation from business, which I long thought and still think is the biggest impairment to even greater leaps forward. And I think some of that's being dismantled. I'm not saying it's all good or bad, but regulation is a problem for business. Certainly was in the telephone business, you know, too much regulation, over-regulation. So I think we're doing okay on the business finance side. You know, just like everything else, you and I would change some things. But I think we're doing okay now. It's certainly unconventional, and it's a time of turmoil, but I think we're doing okay. One was which saved the Spurs from leaving San Antonio. Because the day I got here in 1992, I got a call from the USAA head, the general, and he called me and said, "Ed, can you come out and we need to talk?" Just General McDermott. And so I walked in, and we had met before, but we didn't know each other. And he said, "The Spurs are leaving either this week or tomorrow if we don't buy them." And so a lot of people are not familiar with this story, but he put up the money and we put up the money and bought the Spurs that day. And so for a short time, AT&T and USAA were the owners of the Spurs, and we saved them from moving because they had been sold. Once we purchased the Spurs and were sole owners, we both agreed that we should sell off our interest locally to people like Peter Holt, Lowry Mays. Those people bought it. Red McCombs owned the Spurs in 1992 and had sold them. If McDermott hadn't called and we hadn't had that meeting, the Spurs wouldn't be here today. We said, "My God, we just moved here, you know, like today, and the pro team's moving out? No way. We're not going to let that happen." You know, I think if you look, you'll see that we were involved in the building of the AT&T Center. You know, General Motors did a lot of things. The Symphony, big contributors to that, which, as you know, currently has big problems, as it does in most cities. But I think we were heavily involved in the community. I know we were.